Okay, hello, hello, hello. Lovely to be able to speak to you again. I hope you're all keeping well, healthy, and happy. Let me take this opportunity to say thank you so much for all your shares, your likes, subscriptions. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal. You've bowled me over once again with all the love and support that you have shown. So I just want to say thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. Now, this video is a video about The Wizard of Oz, the 1939 movie. And you'll be thinking, wait a minute, we typically are used to the political commentaries that you talk about, and that's true, right? This is, chances are, if you're watching my channel or you're subscribed to it, you'll have done so because of the political stuff I talk about, or the myriad of other subject areas that I tend to cover on many different things. But the thing with The Wizard of Oz, and the reason why I'm making this video, is because I think it shows and it represents the modern day challenges that we're facing socially and politically. Okay? It actually highlights these in ways that a lot of people maybe don't know, because it's dismissed typically as a sort of a children's movie, right? But you all know the movie, so you've all seen it, right? And there's very subtle layers in the movie, which is based on L. Frank Baum's novel, which was a children's novel. And the majority of literary critics know, and I've spoken about it, that the novel itself was about the political or economic problems that existed during the time that L. Frank Baum wrote it. Now, of course, the movie takes that to a whole new level. Okay? In many ways, it makes it easier to see the very things that are plaguing us today. Right? What are those things? Well, you've got this dichotomy between authority and the individual. Okay? You've got this challenge, if you like, between power and control versus liberty and freedom. Okay? And you'll see what we're talking about here as we get into deeper and deeper. So, the film begins in Kansas. Okay? And you're obviously all going to be pretty familiar with that, because we all know the line, "You ain't in Kansas no more, Dorothy," right? So, the film starts out in Kansas. And everything's depicted in this sort of black and white sepia tone. And there's this young woman called Dorothy Gale, who lives with her dog Toto on the farm of her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. Now, Dorothy Gale, if you were interpreting the plot of the movie in one of two ways, that being the psychoanalytic perspective, or if you were trying to give it an occult interpretation, you'd come to the same conclusions, by the way. But Dorothy Gale represents the anima. Okay, this is the part of the male psyche, which has the psychological qualities of action, courage, and logic being balanced out by true care, compassion, and love. Okay, and you start to realize how all of that fits in as the movie goes on, of course, right? Now, her dog Toto represents the adventurous spirit. Okay, the individual who's constantly looking to new horizons, new things, that part of yourself that is always looking to explore. Okay? And you see this symbology, by the way, through the tarot deck as well, via the Fool card. Okay, you've got the Fool who's about to embark on a journey, depicted on the card alongside the little dog, right? And what happens later on in the movie with Dorothy is that she departs on a journey with her little dog, right? It's pretty obvious, which is the point. And most folks miss that, okay? Because either perhaps they're not familiar or, whatever else. So, Dorothy's dog gets in trouble with a mean neighbour, Miss Elmira Gulch, because Toto tries to bite her, right? But Dorothy's family and the farmhands that work on the farm are too busy to pay attention to her and to her problem. Okay? What's that representative of? Well, what does that represent? You've got someone who later becomes identified, by the way, with authority. Okay? That's Miss Gulch, the neighbour, who is very cross with the adventurous spirit, the dog, biting her. Because the dog recognizes straight away this is somebody who wants to impose authority. Okay? Just like you, right? There are certain aspects of yourself that will straight away and immediately recognize when people are trying to be authoritarian. You'll notice it straight away. And there's a part of you that will rebel against that, just like Toto the dog does, right? And we see this played out in the next little bit that happens, where Miss Gulch arrives with permission from the sheriff to have Toto euthanized. Now that's a pretty powerful scene, right? Although it seems innocuous if you're just kind of watching it. So Miss Gulch, then, who represents authority and the power of the state, which you'll see taken to an even greater extreme later on, uses the power of the sheriff, i.e. the police, the apparatus and the arms of the state, okay, to attempt to have Toto, the adventurous spirit, the dog, euthanized. And you see this playing out in your own psychosocial circle, where the state is constantly attempting to silence you, to euthanize your rebellious spirit. Okay? And so Miss Gulch takes Toto away. But he escapes. He's that rebellious that he escapes the authority and returns to Dorothy. Okay, he won't be put down, he won't be euthanized. And that's the whole point of this, really, at the end of the day, is that your rebellious spirit against authority must never be silenced. You must never allow the state to euthanize it, right? It will always hopefully find a way to escape the clutches of authority. So Dorothy decides to run away from home, fearing that Gulch is going to return. And so this is the departing again. It's the same depiction with the Fool, isn't it? Where he's departing on a journey. They're running away, right? The individual and the dog. And they meet Professor Marvel along the way, who's a phony but kind fortune teller, who realizes that Dorothy has run away and tricks her via his crystal ball into believing that Aunt Em is so ill that Dorothy must return home. Okay? Now, again, this is a very interesting scene, because Professor Marvel represents two things. In terms of the occult interpretation, Professor Marvel is the magician, clearly. Okay? The illusionist. And from a psychoanalytic perspective, Professor Marvel is the trickster within the psyche. Okay? But he's a kind trickster, right? Which is a really kind of strange thing if you think about it. Because immediately if you say trickster, people get all kinds of strange ideas and connotations. But tricksters aren't necessarily malevolent. Let me give you a personal example for those of you that have children or have been around children, toddlers and infants. You'll be familiar with how hard it is to get them to eat, for example, right? So what do? Right? You create an illusion, right? You're like, here comes the airplane and it's going to land on the landing strip, right? You know damn well that that spoon is not an airplane, okay? And you know damn well that the child's mouth is not the landing gear, right? The landing strip. But what you're doing is you're using trickery, okay? The art of illusion, the art, believe it or not, of persuasion and hypnosis, to some degree, right? Not in any malevolent sense, but you're using it to help the child to get the necessary nutrition. You see, so we all have this little trickster aspect in us, even when it's motivated by absolutely right, correct, moral things, right? Believe it or not, this trickster can do remarkably moral, true, righteous things. And Professor Marvel is actually doing this in this instance. He doesn't want Dorothy to run away from her home out of fear of authority. Okay? He's actually almost tricking her into confronting authority, right? Because he knows it's good for her in the long run. So Dorothy races home just as the powerful tornado strikes. And she's unable to get into her family's storm cellar. So she seeks safety in her bedroom. But a wind-blown window sash hits her in the head and knocks her out, right? And this is where the entire movie starts to change. The house gets picked up and is sent spinning in the air by the twister. Now, what does that represent? Well, the tornado is obviously a representation of nature. Okay, and nature by default is chaotic. Okay, so the tornado is representing chaos, right? And we see this also played out in our own lives when chaos strikes. Everything gets sent into a spiral. In this case, Dorothy's home, her house, her home, the place where she's most comfortable, the structure with which she's most comfortable, is completely spun around and around, right? And she's knocked unconscious by everything that's going on, so she's no longer conscious of her surroundings, right? And you'll see this playing out in your own lives as well. So when something happens, well, let's back up a little bit and talk about this. So, as we said, the tornado represents chaos. And what is chaos? I've already explained this in one of my previous videos, but let me reiterate it. Chaos is the unknown. A chain of events or a sequence of events or just an event itself, a happening, that is unexpected. Okay? All the things you know, all the things you don't know, all the things that could happen, all the things that might happen, those all constitute chaotic events. Chaos. And Dorothy's sent spinning up inside the twister. And when she wakes up again, she sees some very strange scenery outside. That being an elderly lady in a chair, a few farm animals, and two guys rowing in a boat. And she sees Miss Gulch, still pedaling her bicycle, who transforms into a cackling witch flying on a broomstick. That witch is the Wicked Witch of the West, as we'll find out later on. But, now what does that represent? Well, Miss Gulch obviously represents authority, as we spoke about. And people who are in positions of authority or become authoritative are always pedaling their bicycles, if you like, just like Miss Gulch does, with the storm, right, with the chaos. And this transformation which happens with her into a cackling witch, well, it doesn't take a genius to see that that's the malevolent aspect of authority, right? And we see this played out in many, many fairy tales. For example, if you read the Brothers Grimm and the Hansel and Gretel tale with the old witch who wants to cannibalize the kids, and then there's similar, by the way, motifs in that. Okay, but you see it in all kinds of stories. In Snow White, you see the same Wicked Witch. In Sleeping Beauty, you see the same Wicked Witch character. This is something that is there in pretty much most human stories. And she's flying on a broomstick, of course, indicating that she has the power to almost a power alongside the storm, because she's not knocked out and she's not knocked away from the tornado. She's inside the tornado, and she has some sort of symbiotic relationship with it. Okay, authority figures basically what this is saying is authority figures always love to inflict chaos on the individual, right? So the farmhouse crashes in Munchkin Land, in the land of Oz. And suddenly the whole movie changes to Technicolor. This is the great transformation that happens. So now you know that you're in the land of the subconscious. Okay? And Dorothy meets Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, and the Munchkins, who welcome her as their hero. And so begins the hero's journey, of course, right? Because the house that has landed in Oz has landed on top of the Wicked Witch of the East, killing her, right? Which is pretty awesome. Leaving only her stockinged feet. The Wicked Witch of the West arrives to claim her sister's ruby slippers. There's symbology with the ruby slippers as well, by the way. In L. Frank Baum's original novel, the slippers weren't ruby but silver, okay, which is an alchemical sort of symbolism. But the ruby is also alchemical in its symbolism as well, because there's this connotation to precious stones, right? That being, which we'll get into later on, which will become more apparent, the Philosopher's Stone, right? The ultimate goal of any alchemist. And if you want to get a taste of this, you can look at C.G. Jung's Psychology and Alchemy. Because alchemy is not necessarily what people think it is. It's Hermetic alchemy is a way of describing the psychological processes which lead an individual to become individuated, right? The end result of that being the Philosopher's Stone, right? The ability to be totally yourself. And Glinda transports the ruby slippers onto Dorothy's feet before the Wicked Witch of the West can get them. And so the Wicked Witch swears revenge on Dorothy for her sister's death. And what that represents basically is, if you kill one head of the snake, if you like, the Hydra, the Medusa, call it what you want, right? That's all. These are all aspects of authority that induce fear in us. Okay, the fearful monsters, if you like. And the witch, of course, is also symbolic of the fearful monster, right? But if you take down one of them, another one pops up, right? That's just the nature of the thing. Because there are too many people brainwashed and indoctrinated into believing that authority is good and it's great, and they'll always put someone else in place inside that power vacuum, right? And Glinda tells Dorothy that she needs to follow the yellow brick road to Emerald City, where the Wizard of Oz might be able to help her get back home. Now, the yellow brick road in L. Frank Baum's original novel also represented the alchemical process, or the monetary process in Baum's novel, of turning lead into gold, right? Turning something worthless into something worth a lot. Okay? And this is what the yellow brick road symbolizes here as well. The journey of turning lead into gold from a psychological perspective, right? You're changing something that is perhaps useless in some regard. So if you've been caught up in the chaos, so let's recall this. So if you've been caught up in the chaos and you've become all flustered and you've lost your mind and you're spinning in your head, then you've become useless to yourself for that moment, for that instant, right? And so if you're able to, you're then transforming that useless part of yourself, something worthless, into something worthwhile, right? And that's what the journey represents as well, right? The journey along the yellow brick road. And where does the yellow brick road lead to? It leads to the Emerald City. What is an emerald? An emerald is a precious stone. What is the ultimate end goal, the end game of psychoanalysis and the alchemical process from that perspective? Well, the end goal is to be able to get the Philosopher's Stone, which here is represented by the Emerald City, okay? Where the Wizard of Oz might be able to help her get back home. So the wizard, what does he represent? Well, we later on learn in the movie that the Wizard of Oz is actually Professor Marvel, right? But I hope I haven't spoiled the movie for you. But the wizard is a magician yet again, right? So we had Professor Marvel, who was a fortune teller, right? A phony fortune teller, the trickster, the magician. And you've got the Wizard of Oz, who also, by the way, later is exposed as a phony, right? Who is a trickster and a magician, right? So it's pretty easy to glean the symbology from that. So on her journey, okay, we haven't even gotten to the most interesting parts yet, my goodness me. And we're already, I think, 23 minutes into this? So, on her journey, she meets the Scarecrow, who wants a brain, and she meets the Tin Man, who wants a heart, and she meets the Cowardly Lion, who is in need of courage, right? Now, do you remember what we said right at the beginning? Is that the character of Dorothy represents the anima, okay? And the anima has all these different aspects to it, right? If you want me to list them off again: action, courage, logic, true care, compassion, and love, right? Okay, so the Scarecrow, who feels that he's missing a brain, okay? Later, by the way, we find out that he's not. He's actually the smartest of the bunch, but he's missing the brain, the logic, the brain, okay? The woodman, the Tin Woodman, the Tin Man, the Tin Man is missing his heart. So that's true care, compassion, love, right? And you've got the Cowardly Lion. Hold on a second. The Cowardly Lion is representative, of course, of courage, because he's lacking the courage. And the Wizard of Oz later purportedly gives him courage, which he doesn't actually, but we'll get to that. So the point being, these are all the parts of the anima, okay? They're all parts of the anima. And Dorothy's on her way to exploring that, right? So the whole individual, yourself, is on a journey to have the capacity to act the courage that's necessary, the logic that's necessary, the care that's necessary, the compassion that's necessary, and the love for yourself, for your community, for your family, for those that you do love. All of that needs to be present in the fully individuated whole self. Okay? So Dorothy invites each of her compatriots to accompany her. And the witch, of course, who is the authority figure, the absolute tyranny of the land of Oz, if you like, right? The totalitarian dictator, tries to stop them several times. The witch is always trying to stop them. But they reach the Emerald City. Inside the Emerald City, after initially being rejected, they're permitted to see the wizard, who appears just as a kind of a large head surrounded by fire, right? So another interesting part about the movie, by the way, I just want to throw this in there. Another interesting part about the movie is, we talked about how there's a lot of alchemical symbolism. Well, there absolutely is. You've got the 4 elements in alchemical symbology: air, earth, fire, and water, okay, that all represent different aspects of ourselves. So to briefly go over them, because I did this in another previous video as well, air represents endurance, leadership, idealism, victory, beauty, and glory. Okay, air, we see that with the gust of wind that blows the window sash, which hits Dorothy in the head, which is again symbolic. Okay, air is also something that represents the human spirit, okay, which is consciousness and harmony and balance. And interestingly, Dorothy gets knocked unconscious. Okay, you also have in the movie earth, which is represented in different parts of it, which is your reason, your judgment, karmic law, natural law, and karmic consequence. Okay, you've got fire depicted in the movie, as we just spoke about, with the Wizard of Oz, who's surrounded by fire when they first see him. Well, not him, but the projection. What does fire represent? Why is he surrounded by fire? Because fire represents wisdom, and he's the Wizard of Oz, okay? Wisdom, understanding, willpower, the individuated man, okay? Which are all the things that the Wizard of Oz actually is, right? Now, there's also, and I don't want to, again, spoil the movie for you, but there's also the symbol of water, okay? Which is kindness, love, mercy, courage, strength, emotions, right? And obviously this alchemical symbolism through the movie is there to tell us something. It's there to tell us something. If you are able to interpret it, I wouldn't say the correct way, but if you're able to interpret the movie at all and glean something from it, right? The whole point of a good movie is that you can take something away that speaks to you, that tells you something about yourself, right? And I think we all know this in our subconscious in some sense. The fact that the movie is telling us all these things, we just, most of the time, never really pay conscious attention to that. So, the wizard agrees to grant the wishes of Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion if and when they bring him the broomstick of the Witch of the West. Okay? On their journey, they agree to do this. So on their journey to the witch's castle, the group passes through the haunted forest. And the witch is viewing everything they're doing through a crystal ball, right? This, by the way, this is another bit of symbology which I think is particularly relevant to the times we're living in. So the witch is the authoritarian, right? And she is surveilling the individuals. Do we see that with the surveillance state? I leave that to you to answer, okay? Well, actually, yeah, I'm comfortable answering that. Absolutely. The state is surveilling us all the time. They're intruding into our privacy constantly, okay? They're keeping an eye on all your online activities. They're keeping an eye on, and we know this from the Snowden revelations, we know what kind of shenanigans they've been getting up to, okay? But the witch is doing the same thing here. The surveillance state, the witch is doing exactly the same thing. Right? She's surveilling Dorothy and her compatriots. And then what does she do? She sends her winged monkeys to harass Dorothy. Okay? Well, what do the winged monkeys represent? Well, they, just like originally, before the adventure began, just like originally, the sheriff was representative of authority, right? Or the arms of the state, rather, which are also authoritarian, and they obey the wishes of the actual authority figure. The winged monkeys here do the same thing. The winged monkeys are all those people that follow the orders of every single piece of state apparatus that exists, right? Like the police, like the military, like elements of the deep state, weapons manufacturers, whatever, right? The banking cartels. The winged monkey, but in this particular case, the winged monkeys are the apparatus which apply force to harass the individuals. Okay, so she sends the winged monkeys, and they all obey her commands because they're monkeys, right? And I think this speaks to the way in which authority figures also view their winged monkeys, the police, right, or the military, which is they'll snap their fingers, and the people that obey authority in those institutions snap to line, right? Snap into line. So the winged monkeys capture Dorothy and Toto. And at the castle, the witch receives a magical shock when she's trying to get the slippers off of Dorothy. And then she comes to this realization that Dorothy has to be dead first before she can take the slippers. So the slippers represent the Philosopher's Stone, just like Emerald City did, right? And the witch realizes that in order to prevent Dorothy from acquiring that self-knowledge, she's going to have to kill her, right? And we see elements of the state do that frequently, right? If they feel that you're too close to gaining any kind of power or knowledge, they're going to attempt their very best to kill you, if not physically, then certainly through character assassination. Right? It's just a given fact. But Toto escapes, so the dog escapes, the adventurous spirit escapes, leads her friends to the castle, and after ambushing the guards, they march inside wearing stolen uniforms and free Dorothy. So, logic, courage, and true care free Dorothy from the confines of authority. Okay, that's a pretty powerful statement. That's a pretty powerful statement in that movie. But the witch discovers them and traps them. So the witch comes upon them as they're freeing Dorothy and tries to trap them. However, the Scarecrow uses the Tin Man's axe to cut a rope and send a gigantic chandelier swinging down onto the witch's soldiers, knocking them to the floor and then Dorothy and her friends escape. So what happens there is that the Scarecrow has used his brain, his logic, with the Tin Man's axe, right? Which is the action from the heart and the logic, right? To dumbfound the witch, right? To stop the witch in her tracks. And the witch and the guards chase them through the castle, finally surrounding them. And then the witch tries to set fire to the Scarecrow because the witch is terrified. Look at this. This is the symbology. This is why I'm saying it's so profound. The witch is terrified that the logical capacities and the brain capabilities of the individual are going to present major serious threats to her power of authority, right? She wants power over others, and logic and intelligence frighten her. So she sets fire to the Scarecrow. That's a pretty powerful statement right there. What are they doing right now in every single school which exists up and down your country? Our countries, right? Everywhere. What are they doing? They're setting fire to the Scarecrow. They're preventing people from gaining any kind of real, true, objective knowledge and truth. Okay? They're preventing logic being taught, and they're preventing intelligence prevailing because the state sees those as a threat. But what happens is, as she tries to set fire to the Scarecrow, or she rather does set fire to the Scarecrow, Dorothy puts out the flames with a bucket of water. So this is the symbology of the water I was talking about alchemically. And through that, the witch is splashed with the water, and she starts melting away. And that's when we hear that iconic line, "I'm melting!" Okay? So, as we were talking about before, water represents courage, strength, and love, okay, and mercy, right? Which defeat authority, the power of the state, okay? Now, interestingly, once the witch is dead, the guards start rejoicing. Right? So this is what happens. Now the individuated person, the person who is fully cognizant and capable of understanding what is happening around them and has the will within them, the willpower to do what is morally and consciously correct, okay, prevails over authority. And the guards who had none of that suddenly find themselves rejoicing. So Dorothy and her compatriots become the champions of the very same people that were too frightened and too cowardly to really act against the witch. And this is an interesting thing we see societally as well. When people come up that speak the truth, the people that are apparatus of the state quietly in their hearts suddenly begin to hero worship them. And that's exactly what does happen. It's a very, very strange phenomenon, but you see this happen. Not everyone does. The flying monkeys didn't. The winged monkeys don't. But the guards do. Right? The guards... See, the winged monkeys, I would say, probably are more representative of the police force, right? Whereas the guards are the military, if you like. Okay? And there's a distinct difference between the two. When you get heroic citizens who embody all the things we've spoken about, action, courage, logic, care, right? All of those things, then people in the military quietly hold a very strong respect for those people. Okay? And you see this happen. For example, what happened at Standing Rock? The veterans. Okay, I'm going to give you a real world example of this. The veterans all stood together against police abuses when they saw that there were heroic people on the front lines of that protest, okay, standing against it. This is what happens. This is the transformative power of people who understand, who have logic, truth, wisdom, courage, love on their side. Anyway, so back at Emerald City, the wizard, they go back with the charred broomstick, right? Which is given to them by the guards. So the guards give her the memento, if you like. And back at the Emerald City, the wizard is delaying granting their requests. Then Toto pulls back the curtain and exposes the wizard as a normal, ordinary man who's been projecting a fearsome image. Okay? And he denies Dorothy's accusation that he's a bad man, because Dorothy says, well, you're terrible, you're a bad man because you've been using this trickery, right? Remember we were talking about the trickster, right? Well, the Wizard of Oz is just this trickster, right? And the adventurous spirit knows this as well, because it knows the trickery that's employed by all forms of tricksters out there. And because we're so frightened of the trickster by nature, right? We think that it has a fearsome sort of image. So to give you an example in mythological terms, in Norse mythology, you've got Thor and you've got Loki. And Loki is the trickster god, right? And everybody kind of views him with suspicion and, they don't like him, right? And they think that he's to be feared, right? Loki doesn't want to be feared. Well, obviously in the Marvel canon universe he does, right? But Loki doesn't want to be feared. He's a grand trickster in order to accomplish something great, right? 9 times out of 10, in fact, even inside the Marvel universe, he ends up becoming useful, or his actions end up becoming useful to the hero, right? The hero's journey yet again. But he does admit, the wizard does admit to being a bit of a humbug, right? Those are his words. He then gives the scarecrow a diploma, okay? He gives the lion a medal and the Tin Man a ticking heart. A ticking heart-shaped watch, rather. So he's giving this illusion that he's granting their wishes, okay? And he's convincing them that they've received what they were looking for. Now, the point of that is, the diploma, okay, doesn't hold any value in and of itself, because the Scarecrow had already demonstrated that he had intelligence when he defeated the Wicked Witch, and in many other instances and occasions, right? But the diploma, the symbology of the diploma works on 2 levels. First of all, you've got this crazy idea that people have, that having some sort of a piece of paper, right, like a diploma or a degree or, this sort of thing, grants you or gives you intelligence. It makes you intelligent. Well, here's the thing. There are plenty of stupid people with diplomas and degrees. Plenty of stupid people with diplomas and degrees. They don't know anything, right? And you don't have to go far to see this, right? The diploma is an illusion, okay? That's the whole point. The diploma is an illusion. Just like Dumbo and the magic feather, right? The Scarecrow doesn't need the diploma because he's already got the intelligence. The same thing happens with the lion, right? You've got this shiny medal that the Wizard of Oz gives the lion. But in actual point of fact, he doesn't need it because he's already demonstrated his courage. The lion just gets this shiny bauble, which is also an illusion, And you see this all the time. See, there are idiots in society, okay? And this is why this movie's so brilliant, aside from all the stuff we've talked about, right? You see idiots in society that actually believe that having these kind of illusory, fake things, right, these material possessions, somehow imbues them with the qualities that they represent. Well, no, the qualities are there with or without the illusory affectations. Okay, they're with or without the diploma or the shiny medal. And the Tin Man's, I guess, is one of the worst tricks, because he gets a ticking heart-shaped watch, right? Which is a material possession. Okay, the thing about that is that the heart is obviously it's a material organ, right? But when we talk about the heart, the language that we use, the words we use, we're really talking about the core of the individual. And even the word core represents something much more profound than just the organ itself, right? It's interchangeable, but the core of the individual is something far greater, and that is the thing, the place from which we experience care and love. Part of it is physiological, but there's another side to that. There's actually genuinely another side to that. And that is there regardless of the material showing of a thing, right? So to give you a more solid example of what I'm talking about, because it sounds like I'm just talking nonsense here, right? But I'm not, right? So to give you a more solid example, let's take Valentine's Day. People give out cards on Valentine's Day, don't they, right? This represents how much I love you or whatever, right? But does it? The love is there regardless of whether the Valentine's Day card is there or not, or whether the gifts are there or not, right? Same thing with anniversaries, same thing with birthdays. It's there, or it's not, okay? It's already existent. You don't need material things to say, right? You can demonstrate using material objects, but that is, I would say if that's your primary mode, then it's an inferior type of love that you're experiencing, you know? Anyway, back to the business at hand. So, he prepares to launch his hot air balloon, the Wizard of Oz, to take Dorothy home. But Toto runs out of the balloon basket and chases a cat. And Dorothy follows him. And the balloon leaves without them, right? Now, the point of that is that the trickster, you don't know if you can trust the trickster or not. He may be telling the truth. He may be able to take Dorothy home, right? Or he may not. So Toto, the adventurous spirit, recognizing the deception, decides, I'll follow my own path, thank you very much, right? Which is exactly what happens in us in our personal journeys, right? And then Glinda returns, who's the good witch, and tells her that she can still return home by using her ruby slippers. And that's when we hear again another iconic line, there's no place like home, while she's tapping the ruby slippers, right? Now again, we see the alchemical journey coming to completion, okay? So first they've reached Emerald City, the Philosopher's Stone. Then we see the tapping of the ruby slippers, and both of those are very strong allusions to having achieved that level of consciousness, that level of individuation. And so Dorothy wakes up after this. And that's a very powerful scene as well, because now Dorothy's conscious, right? And she's got an integrated personality, right? She's integrated all the different aspects of herself through this hero's journey, right? Through the subconscious. And having gleaned all the necessary information from that to come out of chaos, she emerges from that chaos. She wakes. And she sees her family, her friends, the farmhands, Professor Marvel, and Toto. And her friends and family dismiss her adventure as a dream. Okay? But Dorothy insists it was real, and that there really is no place like home. And that ending scene, again, is powerful in and of itself, because what that's saying is our personal journeys matter much more than other people's perceptions of them. Okay? Just because other people can't see the things you've been through doesn't make them irrelevant, right? Because they're important for you. Okay? Yes, they might not be entirely objectively, relevant as such, but subjectively to yourself, they are necessary, because they are the things that build your character. They are the things that build your story arc, if you like. And the end of the movie really does show that. So it's a profound message in this film, is what I was saying in the beginning. You've got the destruction of the state, right? The authority, the Wicked Witch. You've got the hero's journey, where all these different parts are integrated: the logic, the courage, the heart, and the adventurous spirit of the self. And it all culminates in an awakening. Now, I can't think of a more powerful narrative than that, you see. So, most of these things people tend to miss when they first watch the movie as kids, because you don't know all this stuff, right? You're a kid, what do you know, right? But there's a lot in it, and it's really fascinating when you break it down. You can break it down in all kinds of other interesting ways, but this is certainly my interpretation of it. And I hope that has been informative for you, and entertaining in some sense as well, because I know the movie was definitely entertaining for me. So thank you so much for watching. Take good care, and God bless you.